My God, mother-in-law, did you seriously come to your own husband's funeral? In that cheap dress, Camilla D'Amour's voice cut through the solemn silence of the chapel like a harsh slap. It's embarrassing. You look like a pauper. All eyes instantly fixed on me. My simple, elegant black dress, which I had chosen specifically for its understated appearance, seemed to deeply offend my daughter-in-law. What she didn't know was that this supposedly cheap piece had actually cost me $80,000. "Camilla, please, we're saying goodbye to Dad," whispered Adrian, my son, sounding strained. "I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it's traveled, because this story is going to leave you speechless." But my daughter-in-law had already found her audience. "No, Adrian, someone has to say it. I work in high-end boutiques. I recognize quality when I see it. And this?" She pointed at my dress with unconcealed disdain. "This is a clearance rack special. Your mother has zero class." Her friends Candace and Naomi nodded like little sheep, whispering among themselves. The murmur of disapproval spread through the pews. I remained silent, hands clasped, pretending her words cut me deep. "Poor Laurent," Camilla continued, raising her voice even louder. "He must be turning over in his grave, seeing his widow didn't even have the respect to dress decently for his send-off. How humiliating for the entire family." Tears began to well up in my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, pent-up rage. This woman dared to humiliate me on the most painful day of my life, completely unaware that I was the owner of the very brand for which she worked as a mere sales associate. "Just look at her," she pressed on with her performance. "She can't even afford a decent dress. Adrian, you really should give your mother some money so she can buy something appropriate." I smiled inwardly. If she only knew that my closet held over 200 designer dresses, that my bank account had more zeros than there were days in the year, and that her pink slip was already signed and waiting in my private office. My daughter Isabel gently touched my arm and whispered, "Mom, don't listen to her. She's being cruel." But I needed to hear more. I needed Camilla to keep digging her own professional grave. "You know what, Adrian?" Camilla said dramatically toward her husband. "When we have children, I hope they never end up like your mother, so utterly basic." She gave me a pitiful look. "Look at her. She doesn't even know how to dress for such an important occasion." The snickers from her friends grew louder. Candace even dared to comment. "It's true, Tiff. I work in retail too, and that dress couldn't have cost more than $100. If they only knew that the mother-of-pearl buttons on my dress alone cost $500 each." "Exactly, Candace," Camilla retorted. "That's why I say she has no class. At the boutique where I work, we cater to sophisticated clients, women who truly understand fashion and elegance, right?" She gestured toward me dismissively. My son Adrian looked intensely uncomfortable, but didn't say a word. Typical. He'd always been a coward when it came to confronting his wife. "Camilla, that's enough." Isabel finally intervened, her voice firmer. "No, let her be," I said softly, my voice trembling just enough. "She's right. I don't understand these elegant things like she does." Camilla smiled triumphantly. "At least you admit it. Look, mother-in-law, it's not your fault you were born without good taste, but you could at least make an effort not to embarrass the family in public." Her friends applauded discreetly. Naomi added with false sympathy, "Oh, the poor thing. It must be hard not having the resources to dress appropriately." "Precisely," Camilla continued, emboldened. "Imagine showing up to your own husband's funeral dressed like you're running to Monoprix for groceries. She just has no common sense." The whispers intensified throughout the chapel. I could hear fragments. "What a shame. The poor woman. How embarrassing. Perfect. The more people who witness this public humiliation, the sweeter my revenge would be." "And those shoes," Camilla went on, pointing at my classic black pumps. "They look like something you'd find at a flea market. Goodness, if I were her, I'd be ashamed to leave the house like that." Those pumps were a $12,000 custom pair, but she would never know. "Look, mother-in-law," she said condescendingly, leaning in toward me. "I know you don't have much money, but the next time you need to dress for something important, I can lend you something from my wardrobe. I have connections at the best stores." The irony was delicious. This woman who earned barely $3,000 a month selling my clothing in my boutique was offering to lend me dresses. If only she knew that I personally signed her paycheck. "That's very kind of you, Camilla," I replied in a trembling voice, "but I wouldn't want to cause you any trouble." "It's no trouble. It's Christian charity." She responded with a fake smile. "It's what any decent person would do in my place." Her friends murmured their approval. Candace even commented, "You're an angel, Tiff. Not everyone would be so generous to someone so limited." Limited. The word echoed in my mind. If they only knew that my limitations included owning 17 luxury boutiques, 3 textile factories, and a fortune exceeding $100 million. Furthermore, Camilla added, now addressing the entire congregation, "I think we can all learn a lesson from this, the importance of education, of having aspirations, of not settling for mediocrity." The discreet applause confirmed she had achieved her goal, turning my husband's funeral into her personal show of moral superiority. Poor Laurent. She sighed theatrically. He was always worried about his mother-in-law. He used to say he didn't know how she'd manage without him. He was right about one thing. My late husband always worried about me, but not for the reasons she imagined. He knew my heart was too kind, that I forgave too easily. He always told me, "Vivian, the day I'm gone, don't let anyone trample on you." The chapel of Saint-Michel in Paris was wrapped in the kind of silence that hurts more than sound. The light filtered through the stained glass, painting fractured colors over the casket of Laurent Duval, my husband, my partner, my compass, for 40 years. The faint smell of lilies clung to the air, masking the bitter scent of grief. I stood near the front pew, my hands clasped tightly, the black silk gloves concealing the trembling of my fingers. My dress, simple, elegant, chosen to honor him without vanity, whispered softly against the marble floor as I shifted my weight. To everyone watching, I was a picture of calm, the dignified widow. But inside, something fragile had begun to splinter, and then came her voice, shrill, cutting through the reverent, quiet like a shard of broken glass. "My godmother-in-law, did you seriously come to your own husband's funeral in that cheap dress, heads turned?" Gasps fluttered. The mourners, so eager for tragedy, found entertainment instead. Camilla Damour, my daughter-in-law, smiled faintly, enjoying her spotlight. "It's embarrassing," she added. "You look like a pauper." Her words hit harder than I expected, not because they were true, but because they were spoken here in front of Laurent's coffin. I felt the eyes of our family burning holes through me. My son Adrien looked pale. "Camilla, please," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Not here. We're saying goodbye to my father." But Camilla was in her element. The performance had begun. "Someone has to say it," she declared, brushing a perfect blonde curl from her shoulder. "I work in high-end fashion. I know quality when I see it. And this," she gestured toward my dress, "this is from a clearance rack." The whispers spread like wildfire. Her 2 friends, Candace and Naomi, nodded obediently, their pitying eyes full of judgment. I lowered my gaze, the image of restraint. "Let her talk," I told myself. "Let her reveal who she is in front of everyone." Inside, though the wound opened, I felt the sting of humiliation mixing with the raw ache of loss. Laurent had been dead less than a week, and already someone dared to trample on his memory on mine. Poor Laurent. Camilla continued, her tone dripping with false sympathy. He must be turning in his grave, seeing his widow can't even dress with dignity. How humiliating for the family. Tears stung my eyes, not of grief, but fury, the kind that comes from betrayal disguised as kindness. She had no idea, none, that the dress she mocked had cost $80,000, tailored by a private couturier under my own label. She didn't know that the brand she bragged about working for was mine. My daughter Isabel leaned close and whispered, "Mom, don't let her get to you." But I had no intention of stopping her. I needed her to speak to dig her own grave word by word. "When we have children," Camilla said, turning to Adrian, "I hope they don't end up like your mother, so utterly basic." Laughter. From her friends. From the ones who fed on cruelty like gossip. Candace chimed in. "That dress couldn't have cost more than $100. They didn't know that the mother-of-pearl buttons alone were worth 5 times that." I smiled faintly, a crack of ice under fire. If only they knew. If only they knew. Camilla wasn't done. She leaned forward, voice sweet and venomous. "Don't worry, mother-in-law. I know you don't have much. Next time there's a formal event, I can lend you something. Christian charity. You know Christian charity." The phrase nearly made me laugh. Here stood a woman who earned less in a month than I spent on one dinner dress, lecturing me about taste, about class, about charity. I kept my eyes low. "That's very kind of you, Camilla," I said softly. My voice shook, not with fear, but with the effort it took not to strike back. "But I wouldn't want to trouble you." She smirked. "It's no trouble. It's what decent people do." That was the moment something inside me changed. The pain hardened into something else, sharper, colder, limited. That was the word she'd used. If only she knew that my limitations included owning 17 boutiques, 3 factories, and a private portfolio larger than her imagination. If only she knew that I was not the helpless widow she believed me to be, but the silent queen of the empire she worked for. You know, she said, raising her voice so everyone could hear. There's a lesson here. Education matters. Ambition matters. Mediocrity gets you nowhere. Applause, quiet, awkward, echoed through the pews. A performance complete. And in that applause, I felt something break completely inside me. Laurent had warned me years ago, Vivienne kindness will be mistaken for weakness. The day I'm gone, promise me don't let anyone trample you. I hadn't understood then, but now I did. As the service ended, people approached me, polite condolences wrapped in curiosity. I nodded, smiled, faintly played my part. Every touch, every whispered, "So sorry for your loss," felt like a mask pressing tighter against my skin. By the time I reached my car, the modest gray Peugeot I used to maintain my illusion, the trembling in my hands had turned to steel. At home, I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, letting the silence swallow me whole. The apartment looked small, ordinary. Nothing in it hinted at the truth hidden behind the bookshelf in the corner. I kicked off the black pumps Camilla had mocked custom-made worth $12,000 and poured myself a glass of wine. Not boxed wine, as everyone assumed, but a vintage Bordeaux older than her career. I sipped slowly, letting the bitterness settle. The city lights outside flickered against the windowpane reflections of a world that worshipped appearances. My phone buzzed. A message from Isabel. "Mom, I'm so sorry." She was out of line. I typed back, "Don't worry, darling, I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. Not yet. I walked to the bookshelf, pressed a hidden latch, and the shelf slid aside. Behind it, my real-world weighted polished wood, gold-edged contracts, company seals, Duval couture, carved into the mahogany desk. My empire. My secret. On the top drawer sat a folder employee files. I flipped through until I found her name, Camilla Damour, position sales associate. Warnings, 3 tardies. 2 customer complaints. Supervisor note, arrogant attitude. Perfect. The pain in my chest pulsed again, but this time it was not grief. It was energy. I picked up the phone and dialed Grace Morton, my director of human resources. "Madame Duval," she said, her tone gentle. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Grace," I replied, my voice steady now, almost cold. "I need a favor. Tomorrow I want a detailed review of one of our employees, Camilla Damour." A pause. "Of course. Any specific reason?" "Let's just say she's demonstrated a lack of respect for the kind of clients I value most." Grace hesitated only a moment. Understood. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair. The city hummed faintly outside Paris, alive and indifferent. I traced the edge of Laurent's wedding band still on my finger. My reflection in the dark glass stared back, calm, composed, unrecognizable even to myself. The funeral had ended, but something far more dangerous had begun. That night, I whispered to the shadows, "Laurent, mon amour." You were right. They mistook kindness for weakness. Now they'll learn the difference. And somewhere in that silent room between the grief and the fury, I felt him beside me, not as a ghost, but as a promise that this time I wouldn't forgive. Before leaving the chapel, Vivienne notices a stranger, an elegant older man standing at the back watching her with knowing eyes. He slips her a small black envelope embossed with the Duval crest. Inside, a note in her husband's handwriting that reads, "If you're reading this, the truth is already unraveling. Trust no one, Vivienne." That single note changes everything her grief, now entwined with suspicion. Was Camilla's humiliation spontaneous, or part of something bigger? If you were Vivienne, would you stay silent to protect the family press? Zero or strike back to defend your dignity, press? 1-1. The next morning, Paris gleamed under a gray winter sun, polished and cold like the city's conscience. From the street, Duval Couture looked immaculate, tall glass marble floors and the scent of wealth that could make even the poorest soul stand straighter. I stood across the boulevard, hidden behind my oversized sunglasses, watching my own empire breathe. For 20 years, this boutique had been my kingdom. Today I would walk into it disguised as a peasant in her palace. Camilla Damour had no idea I was coming. I crossed the street each step, deliberate, savoring the irony. The woman who had called me classless was about to sell me my own designs. Inside, the boutique glittered with its usual precision racks arranged by color tone, soft jazz murmuring through the speakers, every perfume bottle positioned at the perfect angle. And there she was, Camilla leaning against the counter, phone in hand, laughing too loudly. "You won't believe this girl," she said into the phone. My mother-in-law, the woman's hopeless, wore a dress that looked like it came from a flea market. I almost died of secondhand embarrassment. Her laughter was bright and cruel, slicing through the boutique's elegance like cheap glass. I smiled under my breath. "Keep talking, darling. The show's just begun." She didn't notice me at first. Her voice continued its parade of vanity. "Anyway, when I get promoted next week, I'm going to set higher standards. I mean, our brand represents sophistication. We can't let anyone, especially people like her, ruin our image." A customer waiting nearby cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable. Camilla waved her hand dismissively. "In a minute, madame," she said, never breaking her stream of gossip. That was when I stepped forward. "Excuse me," I said softly. She looked up, annoyed, then froze for a fraction of a second, recognizing my face but unable to process it outside the context of grief. "Oh," she said finally, her voice tight. "Mother-in-law." "What are you doing here? I came to shop," I said simply. "Adrien gave me some money. He said you could help me find something appropriate." Camilla blinked, then smiled like a crocodile. "Oh, that's adorable. Of course. I'll help you, but we'll need to set a budget first." "A budget, yes. Things here aren't exactly cheap, you know. How much did Adrien give you?" I lowered my gaze. 500 euros. She laughed loudly enough for 2 employees to turn their heads. 500. Oh, mother-in-law, with that, you can barely buy a scarf here. But we'll see what we can do. Her tone was syrupy with false kindness. To everyone watching, it looked like charity. To me, it sounded like the overture to her downfall. She led me to a corner where the less expensive accessories were displayed. "Here," she said, holding up a silk scarf. 200 euros on sale. It'll add some class to your... Look." I touched the fabric, remembering the day I'd personally approved its design. "It's very beautiful," I said softly. "I know," she replied with smug pride. "I have a good eye. That's why my boss wants to promote me. She recognizes talent." "Oh, does she now?" Before I could respond, a voice called from behind us. "Camilla, Miss Duval is waiting for you upstairs." Camilla's smile faltered. "Miss Duval, yes." said the manager, Diane. "She's in the office. She said it's urgent." My daughter-in-law paled slightly. "But I'm with a client. I'll take care of her," Diane said politely. Camilla forced another smile at me. "I'll be right back, mother-in-law." "Don't go anywhere. I wouldn't dream of it." As she disappeared up the staircase, I turned to Diane. "How is business?" She lowered her voice. "Strong numbers this quarter, except for a few personnel issues." I smirked. "Let me guess, the glamorous kind." Diane's eyes twinkled. "Precisely." We shared a quiet understanding. While Camilla waited upstairs, likely wondering who this mysterious Miss Duval was, I walked through the boutique as if I were invisible. The younger employees worked efficiently, treating customers with care. Except one, a new girl with bright eyes and an anxious smile. Her name tag read Chloe. "Excuse me," I said, pretending to browse. "How do you like working here?" Her shoulders straightened. "It's wonderful, madame. The brand is incredible. Most of the team is lovely." She hesitated. "Though, some people think working here makes them better than others." "Oh." She looked down. "It's not my place to say, but there's a certain attitude. Some judge customers before they even speak. That sounds unfortunate," I said, suppressing a grin. "What did they teach you in training? That every client deserves respect regardless of appearance. Miss Duval herself said that true elegance is humility." My heart warmed. Good girl. Moments later, Camilla reappeared, frustration painted across her face. "Weird," she muttered. "Miss Duval wasn't even there." "Perhaps she's closer than you think," I murmured. Camilla frowned but brushed it off. "Anyway, let's get back to you. I'll show you the clearance section. It's more your level." She led me to the back racks, away from the main floor's glow. "See this," she said, pulling out a gray dress. 400 euros. Perfect for someone your age. It's simple, won't draw attention. It's from the old collection, I noted. She laughed. "You know your fabrics. How surprising." I studied her carefully, the excessive makeup, the gleaming jewelry. She couldn't afford the smug posture. Every detail screamed insecurity disguised as superiority. "She's playing a part in a comedy she doesn't know I wrote." A silent hum of dark amusement filled me. I wanted to laugh, truly laugh, not at her insults, but at the absurdity of watching someone so small act so grand in a stage she didn't own. If life were a film, this moment would play with violins and champagne bubbles, the widow and the fool dancing in a boutique full of mirrors. She kept talking, unaware of the quiet storm building behind my eyes. "When I get promoted," she said proudly, "I'll enforce new rules. Not everyone deserves to walk into a boutique like this. It cheapens the brand." I tilted my head. "So you'd deny entry to those who don't look wealthy enough?" "Exactly. You understand." "Oh, I do," I said softly, smiling as if sharing a secret. Inside, though, my laughter was dark and rich, the kind that belongs in Reddit revenge stories where pride always eats itself alive. I imagined the commenters already typing, "And then she found out her poor mother-in-law owned the entire brand." Another laugh in Reddit revenge stories, another chapter in poetic justice. Camilla looked confused. "Did I say something funny?" "Not yet," I said, "but you will." At that exact moment, my assistant, Grace Morton, walked in. She spotted me instantly and approached with a smile only loyalty could shape. "Madame Duval," she said discreetly. Camilla blinked. "Wait, Madame Duval." Grace nodded. "Your mother-in-law is my employer." The silence that followed could have frozen the Seine. Camilla's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You live in that tiny flat, you drive a Peugeot." I removed my sunglasses slowly. Appearances can be deceiving. Her mouth fell open, soundless. I leaned in close enough for only her to hear. "You were right about one thing, Camilla. This brand does represent sophistication, which is exactly why you don't belong in it." Grace handed her a sealed folder. "Your employment review, effective immediately." Her hands trembled. "You can't, I can," I said, "and I already have." She stared at me, eyes wet, her world collapsing under the weight of her own arrogance. I turned away, letting her reflection fade into the boutique's mirrors. Before leaving, I paused near the door and looked back one last time. Next time you judge someone's worth by their clothes, remember, even in Reddit revenge stories, pride never looks good on anyone. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. Outside, the winter air tasted sweeter than champagne. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to scream. It only needs to smile. As Vivian walks away, she notices a man in a trench coat across the street, the same stranger from the funeral watching again. This time he's holding a small camera. When their eyes meet, he vanishes into the crowd. A silent question rises in her mind. Was Laurent's death as simple as everyone believed? If you're enjoying this dark elegance of justice, tap like it helps the next chapter find you. The marble floors of my office gleamed like a frozen lake, reflecting the pale morning light that filtered through the Paris skyline. I'd been here since dawn, reviewing reports with a mind that no longer trembled, only calculated. Today was not about revenge anymore. It was about symmetry, about justice finding its perfect shape. Across the polished expanse of glass and gold, my empire waited silent, pristine, and obedient. I had built this world from nothing but patience and quiet fury, and now it would serve as the stage for the final act. Camilla Damour, my daughter-in-law, was on her way. When she arrived, she didn't know yet that she was walking into her own undoing. Diane, my boutique supervisor, had called her in under the pretense of a performance review. "Miss Duval wishes to meet with you personally," she had said. "It's about your promotion." How fitting. The carrot she had dangled in front of her husband, the lie that had bought her a mortgage, would now become the noose tightening around her throat. I adjusted the pearl buttons of my ivory suit, the same kind she had once mocked and waited. Moments later, Estelle, my lifelong assistant, opened the door. "She's here, madame. Send her in." Camilla entered like someone stepping into heaven, unaware it was purgatory. Her smile was brittle, forced, the kind that cracks easily. "Miss Duval," she began brightly, "thank you so much for seeing me." "I've been really excited about sit down," I interrupted. The air thickened instantly. She sat, her confidence faltering under the weight of my tone. For a long moment, I said nothing. I let the silence stretch, deliberate and suffocating. The hum of the city beyond the windows felt like distant applause. Finally, I spoke. "Camilla, do you know who I am?" Her laugh came too quickly. "Of course. You're the director of Duval Couture, my employer." "No," I said. "I am Duval Couture." She blinked. I don't understand." I rose slowly, walking toward the wall of photographs, black and white portraits of the brand's early days. My husband Laurent and I standing beside sewing machines in a tiny workshop, me in overalls thread between my fingers, him smiling behind the camera. "This company," I said softly, "was born in a basement built by two hands and one dream. My hands, my dream." Camilla's breath hitched. "You mean—" Yes, I turned to her. "I own every boutique, every design you've ever sold, every paycheck you've ever earned, including the one you used to buy those ridiculous pearl earrings." Her mouth opened, but no words came. The silence between us was icy, yet electric. Estelle stepped forward with a leather folder. "Madame, the reports." "Thank you." I opened it slowly, page by page. Performance review, disciplinary notes, client complaints. My voice was steady, detached, the tone of someone who had transcended anger. "Let's read together, shall we?" Camilla swallowed. "Miss Duval, I can explain. June 12th, I began. A 60-year-old customer entered the boutique. You dismissed her to the clearance section without asking her preference. You said she didn't look like she could afford better." "That's not July 3rd. Ignored 3 customers while on a personal call. One of them never returned." Her hands trembled. "Please. August 14th. Caught on camera mocking an older client with a colleague." Verbatim. "Some people don't belong among luxury." Camilla's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know, no," I said sharply. "You didn't care. The words echoed like a gavel strike. Estelle closed the folder and handed me another thinner, more recent. Security footage from last week, she explained. Camilla's voice cracked. Last week, yes, I said, pressing a button on the remote. The large screen on the wall flickered to life, showing her standing in the boutique laughing into her phone. My mother-in-law. She looked like a beggar. I almost died of embarrassment. Her own voice filled the room, venomous and shrill. Camilla covered her mouth. No, please turn it off. I let it play 5 seconds longer. When I'm manager, I'll make sure people like her don't set foot in the store. The video cut to black. I turned toward her, my face expressionless. Inside, my heart beat like a metronome, calm, methodical. The satisfaction I felt was cold, refined, and tinged with sadness. So I said, "Tell me, Camilla, what exactly makes someone unworthy of respect age clothes, or the illusion of poverty?" She was sobbing now. "Miss Duval, I swear I didn't mean it. If I had known exactly," I interrupted. "If you had known. That's the problem, isn't it? You only behave decently when you think someone matters." Her tears came faster. "Please don't fire me. Marcus will." "Your husband will survive," I said quietly. "He survived losing his father. He will survive losing his illusion of a wife." For the first time, I saw it, that flicker of realization, the split second when a mask breaks and a person finally sees themselves through another's eyes. "This isn't just termination, Camilla," I said. "This is consequence." Estelle stepped forward with a document. "Termination papers, madame." Camilla's voice dropped to a whisper. "I need this job, please. For the mortgage, the debts." "The mortgage you applied for using a fabricated promotion," I replied. "You lied to the bank. You lied to my son. You lied to yourself." Her sobbing turned raw, desperate. "Please, I'll change. I promise. I'll take any position, even cleaning. Just don't take everything." I looked at her not as an enemy, not even as family, but as a mirror of everything I despised about what money does to people. "It's already gone," I said simply. "You traded your dignity long before you entered this room." The clock ticked softly. The air was glacial. "Security will escort you out," I told Estelle. As the guards entered, Camilla rose, trembling. "Miss Duval, please. Just one more chance." I shook my head. "You had a lifetime of them." She hesitated, then blurted out, "What are you going to tell Marcus?" "The truth," I said. She froze, that single word striking harder than all the rest. "The truth," I repeated, "that you humiliated his mother for sport, that your luxury was borrowed, that your respect was counterfeit." Camilla's legs buckled, but the guards steadied her. She looked at me one last time, eyes full of disbelief. "You're destroying my life." "No," I said, my voice calm as snow. "I'm simply removing the lies." The door closed behind her, sealing the chapter. For a moment, I stood alone in the echoing silence. The victory was total, but it was cold. My heart should have soared, yet it only trembled faintly, like the last note of a violin fading in an empty hall. Justice had been served, but joy refused to join it. I turned toward the window. The Seine flowed below, gray and endless. Somewhere in that current, I imagined Laurent's reflection, his calm eyes reminding me of his favorite saying, "Kindness without strength is a cage." He had been right. The lesson was cruel but necessary, the kind of story one might find whispered in Reddit family tales, where love and justice twist together until they're indistinguishable. And perhaps one day, someone reading those Reddit family tales will understand that the real revenge isn't shouting or winning. It's standing tall in silence while the other person drowns in their own reflection. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, white, merciless. I closed the blinds. The reckoning was over, but peace, that would take longer. As Vivienne turned off the lights, her assistant Estelle paused by the door. "Madam," she said softly, "the investigator you hired, he's found something about Monsieur Laurent's accident." Vivienne froze. "What did he find?" Estelle hesitated. "He says it wasn't an accident at all." The glass in Vivienne's hand trembled just slightly before she whispered, "Tell him to come tomorrow." The chill of justice shifted into something darker, the beginning of truth. If this moment of cold justice struck you, leave a quiet like not for revenge but for truth, finding its way. The night after Camilla's dismissal, the city slept beneath a hush of snow. Paris looked pure again, as if the world had forgiven itself for a few hours. But inside my apartment, forgiveness was far from reach. The documents lay scattered across the mahogany table, reports, contracts, the remnants of a war I'd won but could not celebrate. Winning had never felt so hollow. The silence of victory echoed louder than any applause. Laurent's words haunted me. Kindness without strength is a cage. I had broken the cage. But in doing so, had I become something else, something colder, harder, less human? The doorbell rang. I didn't need to look at the clock. Marcus was on time, my son, punctual as his father used to be. When I opened the door, he stood there in his long wool coat, face pale, eyes hollow, the look of a man whose world had just been burned to ash. "Come in," I said softly. He hesitated before stepping inside. The faint scent of my late husband's cologne, which I had sprayed on his old scarf out of habit, hung in the air. It made Marcus flinch. "Mother," he began, his voice trembling. "What happened today?" Camilla came home hysterical. "She said you destroyed her life." I motioned for him to sit. He didn't. Instead, he stood near the fireplace as if keeping distance would shield him from the truth. "Marcus," I said, "sit down. This conversation isn't one you can have standing." He obeyed reluctantly, his body stiff, his jaw clenched. "Your wife's life wasn't destroyed by me," I said. "She did that herself." "That's not what she said." "Of course not," I murmured. "Camilla has always been skilled at fiction. She told you I ruined her career, didn't she?" He nodded. "She said you humiliated her, that you revealed who she really was." I interrupted. "Yes, I suppose I did." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I said that your wife treated people like dirt, including me. It means she mocked me at your father's funeral in front of our entire family. It means she thought poverty was contagious." Marcus's eyes widened. "No, that can't be true." I rose and went to my desk. "Then let me show you." From the drawer, I pulled the folder Estelle had prepared Camilla's reports, her recorded insults, her lies about promotions and loans. I placed it gently in front of him. Read. He didn't reach for it. "Mother, this isn't necessary. Whatever happened between you two, we can read." My tone cut through the air like glass. Slowly, he opened the folder. Each page turned was a blade. I watched the color drain from his face as he read the transcripts, his wife's voice cruel and mocking, calling me a beggar, a disgrace too old to understand elegance. He stopped halfway through, his hands shaking. "This can't be real. It's all documented," I said quietly. "Your wife didn't just disrespect me, Marcus. She disrespected the values your father and I raised you with." He closed the folder, pressed his palms to his face. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Because I wanted to believe she would change. Because I didn't want to ruin your marriage." He looked up sharply. "And now, I whispered, she ruined it herself." The fireplace crackled between us, a thin barrier of light between two shadows. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Mother, I understand she made mistakes. But you fired her, you exposed her. I gave her what she earned. But she's my wife. And I'm your mother." My voice wavered. "The woman who raised you when your father worked double shifts. The woman who hid her wealth so you'd learn what real worth means. I never asked you to hide anything," he shot back. "No," I said softly, "but I needed to know who you were without the safety of fortune. I needed to know if I raised a man or just an heir." He stared at me, wounded. "And what do you see now? A man who can't tell the difference between loyalty and blindness." His lips parted, but he didn't respond. I saw the flicker of realization, the same one I'd seen in Camilla's eyes before she fell apart. The truth had arrived merciless and late. "I loved her," he said finally, his voice breaking. "Despite everything, I loved her." "I know," I said. "And that's what hurts the most." We both sat in silence, the weight of love and betrayal hanging between us like fog. For a moment, I wanted to reach across the table to pull him into my arms, to tell him everything would be all right. But it wouldn't. Not tonight. Not yet. "Marcus," I said gently, "sometimes love demands we destroy what poisons it." He closed his eyes. "So this is justice then, watching my marriage crumble. This is consequence." I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "And sometimes consequence is justice." He stood, his eyes glistening. "You sound just like Father when you say things like that." I smiled faintly. He would have agreed with me. Marcus turned toward the door. Maybe he would have. But he also would have hated seeing his family fall apart. His words cut deeper than any insult. As he left, the silence that followed was unbearable. A silence heavy with everything I didn't say. "I'm sorry. I didn't want this. I just couldn't let you be fooled." When the door clicked shut, I sat alone for a long time. The snow outside thickened, erasing the city's edges. The world was white, but I felt gray inside, all shadow, no light. Was this what justice looked like? A woman alone in a silent room, surrounded by truth, but starved for peace. I poured myself a glass of wine, but it tasted bitter. From the mantel, a framed photograph of Laurent smiled down at me, his steady gaze, his quiet wisdom. "You'd hate what I've become," I murmured. "Or maybe you'd understand." A knock at the door startled me. I hesitated, then opened it. It was Estelle holding a thin envelope. "Madame," she said softly, "the private investigator sent this tonight. It's about Monsieur Laurent's death." My chest tightened, and she handed it to me. He found something unexpected. Inside was a single page, a report marked "Confidential." At the bottom, one sentence burned like fire. The break lines were deliberately cut. The room tilted slightly. The air vanished from my lungs. "Are you saying—" I couldn't finish. Estelle's eyes were grave. "It wasn't an accident, madame." I sank into a chair. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with something older, deeper, the terrifying need for truth. Who, I whispered. "We don't know yet. But the investigator believes it was someone close. Someone close." The words wrapped around me like a noose. Marcus, Camilla, the funeral, the humiliation, the timing. No, I thought. No, it couldn't be. But another voice, cold and rational, whispered inside me. "Find out. Whatever it costs." I looked out the window where the snow fell heavier now, covering the city in deceitful purity. Justice had taken my daughter-in-law. Would it take my son next? The revelation that Laurent's death was not an accident introduces a new mystery possibly tied to Marcus or Camilla. It deepens Vivian's inner turmoil, forcing her to question not only justice, but the very bloodline she's defending. If this moment of truth broke something inside you too, leave a quiet like it helps more stories like this find their way to those who need them. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus walked out of my apartment that night, and since the private investigator's envelope shattered what little peace I had left. The days moved slowly like winter molasses. I went to work, spoke in measured tones, reviewed reports, attended board meetings. No one would have guessed that each night I sat awake staring at my late husband's photograph, whispering the same question over and over: who killed you? Laurent Estelle had arranged another meeting with the investigator, but I'd postponed it. I wasn't ready, not yet. There was still one more confrontation I needed to face before I could bear to open that door. Camilla had asked to see me. At first I wanted to refuse. What more could she possibly say? But something inside me, a tired ache rather than curiosity, made me accept. Perhaps I needed to see her one last time to understand whether people truly change when stripped of their illusions. The meeting was set for Friday morning at my corporate office. Paris was gray again, the kind of color that makes everything look equal: the poor, the rich, the broken. When Estelle opened the door to my office, Camilla stepped in like a shadow of her former self. Gone was the immaculate posture, the perfume, the confidence. She looked smaller, not just thinner, but deflated, as if her pride had been keeping her upright all this time. "Miss Duval," she said quietly. Her voice was hoarse, drained of its usual sweetness. "Sit down, Camilla," I replied, gesturing to the chair opposite mine. She obeyed, folding her hands like a schoolgirl awaiting judgment. For a moment, we sat in silence. The ticking of the clock filled the room like a reminder that mercy, too, has a deadline. She spoke first. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "I didn't think you would." "I didn't think I would either," I said truthfully. Her eyes flickered with something, shame perhaps, or exhaustion. "I owe you an apology. For everything. For the funeral. For what I said. For what I thought of you." I didn't respond. "Apologies are easy when there's nothing left to lose." She continued. "After I lost the job, everything fell apart. The mortgage gone. The credit cards frozen. Marcus left. I'm living with my sister now outside the city. I've had time to think." "That must be enlightening," I said softly, unable to keep a trace of irony from my voice. She smiled bitterly. "You don't believe me." "I believe you're sorry things turned out badly," I said. "That's not the same as regret." Her head lowered. "I was cruel to you. I can't defend that. But I want you to know I didn't kill Laurent." The sentence hung in the air, cold and heavy. My fingers froze around the teacup. "Excuse me, I know about the investigation," she said quickly. "Marcus told me before we separated. He thought you suspected him, maybe even me." "Should I not?" I asked, voice quiet but sharp as glass. Tears welled in her eyes. "I loved Laurent. He was kind to me when you weren't. He used to tell me you carried the whole world on your shoulders, but forgot to let anyone help." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Hearing Laurent's name in her mouth felt like a violation, and yet the words struck truth. He had said something like that once, long ago. "I didn't come here to defend myself," she continued. "I came because I wanted to give you something." From her worn handbag, she took out a small flash drive. "Marcus found this while cleaning out our old desk. It's from Laurent's laptop. It has his messages, the ones from the week before he died." My pulse quickened. "Why are you giving this to me? Because I think you deserve to know what really happened." I hesitated before taking it. Our fingers brushed, and I felt the faint tremor of her hand. There was no longer arrogance there, only the raw, hollow dignity of a person who's lost the game of life, but still wants to make one last move. "Thank you," I said more to the gesture than to the woman. She exhaled shakily. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't expect it. But I needed you to know I'm not a monster, just stupid. I wanted to be someone important. I thought power came from being above people. Turns out it comes from being beneath no one." Her words lingered like faint perfume, surprisingly graceful for someone who once sneered at everything she couldn't understand. "Camilla," I said finally, "you were never the enemy. You were just the mirror. You showed me everything I despised about myself when I was younger. The hunger to prove I mattered, the blindness to the pain of others. But I learned to channel it. You let it consume you." She looked up, her eyes red but clear. "Maybe I could learn too." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But you must understand something. Redemption isn't a dress you can put on when the weather changes. It's something you earn every day, and it stains easily." She nodded, tears slipping silently down her face. For the first time, I felt something unexpected, not victory, not anger, but an ache that had the shape of compassion and the taste of ash. In that moment, I pitied her, and I hated myself for doing so. "Do you miss him?" she asked suddenly. "Laurent." She nodded. Every day, I said. But I've stopped expecting the dead to answer for the living. Her lips trembled. You think I can change? I studied her for a long moment, the wilted grace, the flickering hope, the desperation to be absolved. I think I said slowly that some people change because they must, others because they can. You'll have to decide which one you are. She lowered her gaze again. I'll try. Trying isn't the same as becoming, I murmured. The clock chimed softly, marking the hour. Camilla rose, wiped her eyes, and whispered, Goodbye, Miss Duval.